Coming up on this episode of the Elite Recruiter Podcast.
I think that the biggest thing, if you want to travel the world or you just want to work remote and do what it is that you're doing, it's like having a clear vision and strategy that's going to pull you through all the moments of distractions, because there's going to be a million of them, is key.
When you say systems, what does that actually mean?
Efficiency.
Okay.
It means creating efficiency. So when I say systems, I'm thinking almost predictable outcomes and just finding efficiencies to execute on those as fast as possible.
Welcome to the Elite Recruiter Podcast with your host, Benjamin Mena, where we focus on what it takes to win in the recruiting game. We cover it all from sales, marketing, mindset, money, leadership, and placements.
Every minute a recruiter spends on paperwork is lost time making placements. That's where Ascend steps in. A modern employer of record and back office solution built to boost the bottom line. Ascend automates onboarding, payroll, compliance, and invoicing in one streamlined platform. It integrates effortlessly with all your tools and scales as you grow, saving you hours and cutting your operational costs significantly. Want less paperwork and more placements? Head over to ascend.com and see how Ascend can make the difference for you. I am so excited about this episode of the Elite Recruiter Podcast because this guest is absolutely living the dream, traveling the world, being a digital nomad while absolutely still crushing in recruiting. She herself is running a $10 million desk while having a team that's running about $7 million. So we are going to dive into how she set herself up to travel the world, how she stayed productive and efficient, how she's actually planning on building her business while doing all these crazy things. But most importantly, how you can have the time, how you can be time rich and wealthy as a recruiter, because this industry is absolutely life-changing. So Ashley Woods, so excited to have you on the podcast. Welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
We have so much to unpack, but before we do that, a quick 30-second introduction, talk about your company before we do a dive into how you even ended up in this space.
Perfect. So Ashley Woods, I'm a partner at Team of Solutions Group and founder of the Time Rich Recruiter. Spent the last 8 years or so in recruitment, building a freedom-focused desk that allowed me to operate at a high level, supporting top-tier clients and giving me the flexibility to live and travel around the world. More specifically, I specialize in contract recruiting, public sector staffing, and helping recruiters scale sustainable time-rich businesses of their own.
Awesome. So, okay, we have so much to unpack in this episode. I am excited because I have way too many questions. But let's get started. How did you even end up in this crazy world of recruiting?
Ironically, I was recruited. So, like most people, I had no idea what recruiting was. I had no idea it was an industry. I had no idea it existed. But it was actually between recruiting and real estate. And my first interview was with a company called Tech Systems. I think you came from Aerotech, so familiar with the Allegis Group family. But really, I just went into it, and I had these two amazing female boss ladies in front of me. And I still had no idea what recruiting was when I left the interview, but I knew I wanted to be like them. So that's kind of what drew me into the world of recruiting.
Okay, so did you end up getting the job there?
Yeah, I got the job on the spot and I had no idea what I was setting up for, but I was like, wow, these ladies are cool and I want to be like them.
Okay, so let's just stop here. You took the job. You were looking at ways to make money. It was real estate or recruiting. You ended up going the recruiting route, which is absolutely awesome. You saw people that you wanted to be like. How was your first, we'll say, 60, 90 days in that recruiting chair?
Exciting. I came from the hospitality industry, and I always explain to my friends, I'm like, recruiting is like hospitality, but like a big kid job version of it. So yeah, no, it was drinking from a fire hose. It was a lot of learning, super fast paced, and Tech Systems is really intense. It was kind of like the military of recruiting. So I just remember being like, yeah, this is fun, fast, cool, and I learned a whole lot. So super exciting the first few months.
And how long did you stay at Tech Systems before you made the jump to the next place?
2.5 years, give or take.
What spurred you on making that next change?
So I did the recruiting thing for just under a year, 10 months, and then I got moved into the account management role. And then I had this dream and vision that I wanted to be in tech sales. So I actually left. I left recruiting and I went into a tech sales role. I was pretty burnt out by the time I left. So I was like, I don't know, this recruiting thing is a lot of work, and I really wanted to be in tech sales. So that was kind of what led me out. And then I realized that I didn't love tech sales. I really loved recruiting. So I eventually came back about a year and a half later. It was short lived.
I mean, I will say like those, what I call them college shops, like the Aerotax, and I know they rebranded recently, like Tech Systems.
Yeah.
Like they grind you hard. And I remember like back
Hard.
then, I actually, if you want a good laugh, left Aerotech as an agency recruiter, like, top 10 in the building across the country. And then I made more money as an internal recruiter.
Yeah. That is funny.
So like, I totally understand why people make the jump, but when you see a different kind of comp plan
Yeah.
and what is actually capable, I've seen it pull so many people back into the recruiting chair.
Yeah.
How was jumping back in the recruiting chair again after leaving tech sales?
It was awesome. I think once that burnout piece had worn off and I saw that people were doing it at a much more sustainable pace, I was like, wow, I love this. Like, I love this space. I love working with people. I love that it's dynamic, that it changes every day, that it pushed me to learn. I was literally like, I went from 100-hour work weeks at Tech Systems to I could hardly pull through a full 30-hour week in tech sales because it was just so boring. So it was just the grind. Like, I love the grind, but yeah, recruiting is just one of those things that kind of ticks a lot of boxes for me when it comes from like an engaging perspective.
Okay. And you talked about, and we probably talked about this offline, but you wanted to design a desk that was able to give you freedom.
Yeah.
Did you plan on being a digital nomad the whole time, or is it something that you like thought about doing after you jumped back into the recruiting chair again?
So I'm a very impulsive person. Always have been. And when I was I worked for a telecom, which is where I was selling tech solutions. And while I worked there, I just like dreamt of traveling the world. And then I got back into the recruiting chair with the idea that I was like, you know what? I know I can make a ton of money in recruiting, so I'm just going to hammer down for 8 months, save a bunch of money, and I'm moving to Bali. That was my idea. And I told my best friend, and then literally like 2 days later, I quit because I found Tima, which is the group that I work for now, and they had no rules. It was, you could be remote, you were your own incorporated business. And I was like, really, no rules? Like, I could go work in Bali? And they're like, yeah, go work in Bali. I was like, done. Left 2 days later. And then, I threw myself off the deep end, and I was like, yes, I get to travel the world and make money.
Okay, so for those listening, we're going to focus a little bit on this digital nomad and then jump back into the recruiting chair again, because I'm just absolutely fascinated. And it's been probably about 150 episodes since I've actually had a great conversation with a digital nomad. Okay, so how many countries have you been to while building your recruiting business?
About 45, give or take.
So you've been to 45 countries. Any favorites?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely favorites. Like, I mean, I'll go back to Bali. Bali's great. Definitely one of my top 3. Portugal.
Okay.
And Canary Islands, I think.
And all these places you've been able to work from while traveling.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so when people travel, typically, like, they shut down their lives. Like, how do you keep a business going, keep a team going while traveling all across the globe?
Yeah, I think good question with challenges. I will. A lot of trial and error. However, I think that the biggest thing, if you want to travel the world or you just want to work remote and do what it is that you're doing, it's like having a clear vision and strategy that's going to pull you through all the moments of distractions, because there's going to be a million of them, is key. So I think we had talked about it, but I have a project. I called it Project Never Going Home. So I didn't know, like, I just had the mentality and the mindset that I was going to do whatever it takes so that I didn't have to go back home, because I wanted to see the world, right? And the world's big. It takes a lot of time. So that was like my main driver, is that I had to pull strong enough. And you need this, right? Like, you need a vision. You need something that you're able to execute on, something that you can measure. Because if you don't have those things, it's really hard to stay focused when all these distractions are coming at you.
Okay, so Project Never Come Home. In the first year, the first few months, did you ever hit some areas where you were just absolutely afraid that it wasn't going to work?
Oh, yeah. It was pretty funny. Not funny, but I remember one time I had because when I left, I had a few, my savings that I've spent very quickly. And I was at the point where I was in Bali, I was eating these $2 sandwiches, maybe $1 sandwich. And I had $20 left in my account waiting for my first paycheck. And, sometimes clients pay late. Well, in this case, my client was paying 3 months late. So I was like very close to not having money and coming back home, but I just stuck it out. I was sleeping in like $7 hostels and I just made it work.
So $7 hostels. Like, how was the internet in these hostels to keep on recruiting?
I would say like in Spanish is muy más o menos. Very, very so. It worked. And, despite what people believe, like it was a cool story. So even when the internet sucked, I was so passionate about what I was doing that people gave me a lot of slack for that. I was like, hey, look, the internet sucks because I'm here. And they'd be like, wow. And people would just forget that I had shitty internet.
Okay, so did you actually make this as part of your sales pitch?
Yeah.
And how did clients take it?
Loved it. They loved it. And I think they loved it because like it was so unheard of. Like this was pre-COVID when people didn't even work remotely, that they're like, wow. So, I aligned myself with clients who shared those types of values with me. And they were just like, hey, look, I don't care where you are, what you're doing, as long as you deliver me what I need. And I think that that's still true, right? If I was able to be on the other side of the world, but still provide tremendous amounts of value, people still used me. It became like a cool story to tell. And people loved it.
Okay, so first client was like almost out of money. When did things start turning around where it was like, project, I'm never coming home, is now working?
It was really when that client paid, because it was like 8 placements in 1K check. So then I was like, okay, I got some runway because life is cheap over here. So yeah, it was really that first 6 months that was a little bit rough. And then, like after 6 months, things in recruiting, so long as you don't let off the gas, like it just started flowing in.
I want to know, like, how do you keep yourself structured during all this stuff? Like, what are some of the habits that you have to keep up, or the KPIs that you try to keep yourself to while traveling to 45 countries, seeing the world, doing all the things that you love to do?
Honestly, I think tech systems just ingrained these habits into me that were so strong that I didn't change my habits when I moved locations. And I think it all starts with like a mindset shift. Like if you go into it and you're like, hey, look, I know that there's going to be a lot of distractions, and you got to be honest with yourself about that, because there will be. But these are my goals, and these are the times that I'm going to do X thing. So it really came down to discipline. How serious were you about hitting those goals? And once you're able to kind of shift to the mindset that like life doesn't change when I leave my house or apartment or whatever it is, like my life didn't change. It was the same structure. I worked from X time to X time. I took calls from X time to X time. I woke up and took calls in the middle of the night because I had to. Sometimes 3 times a night, I would just like go to bed, wake up, go to bed, wake up. So yeah, it was just like not allowing the distractions to take away from, basic goals that I had set out for the day.
Okay, so I want to talk about the goals. I want to talk about the KPIs or whatever numbers, because you said that you learned from tech systems how to work hard. Like, yeah. What does work hard actually mean?
I mean, so I think it's a blend of things. Tech systems was definitely like a KPI heavy organization, right? Like it was, I think you must do 25 candidate interviews, 5 in-person interviews, etc. For me, it was just like put a little bit more focus on conversions. So what converts? And it was just like a trial and error of tracking data. I know that high input correlates with high output.
Okay.
So it was a bit of a balancing game, right? It's like, hey, where is my time converting? Where are these inputs that I'm putting in converting? And that's what I focused on. So it wasn't necessarily a number. It was like, yeah, I need to close X amount of deals and a couple extra. So I always had this couple extra mentality. So honestly, I sticked with the basic tech systems metrics for the most part, but I didn't sacrifice quality for quantity.
Ooh, I love that. It's one of the things I just wanted to make sure that people like understood that, like, when you go travel the world, like you're still having to put the same amount of effort into your recruiting business as you were just hanging out before you start traveling.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that, like, if somebody's thinking about becoming a digital nomad, what are some of the things that you should think about ahead of time that you might not have, but you now wish you might have?
For me, yeah, good question. I mean, having trialed and errored many different countries, I think one of the things that you want to think of ahead of time is like, how can I get myself into a productive space immediately, especially as I'm learning, right? I went to Bali. Wouldn't recommend it as the first place if you work out of North America. But what Bali has that's really powerful is the network, right? So you get this network effect of being surrounded by tons of motivated nomads. So I learned that, Portugal has a very similar environment as Bali. So you get this high nomad environment where you can collaborate and be surrounded by people. So like the proximity becomes a huge advantage. But it's setting up, like, write your goals before you leave is my advice. write your goals before you go on the road, have a clear strategy before you go on the road. And then the biggest things that you're going to want to look for is like internet and workspaces. Always have a backup for internet. Like not just one connection, have two. Most places, well, now you can get Starlink. Did not exist when I started. But yeah, always have a backup for internet. Ask for speed tests. If you're going to an Airbnb, etc., ask for speed tests. But if someone's like kind of brand new, I would say start in co-working and co-living spaces because they're set up for people to do exactly that, is to work and live remotely.
And how did you end up finding like these communities of people to spend time with while traveling the world?
Trial and error as well, honestly. You know, again, going back to like, you got to look where these people hang out, right? Luckily, I went to Bali as one of my first locations, and I saw that like, hey, if I hang out in a co-working space, I'm going to meet a lot of great people. They have networking events. I went to a lot of networking events. So again, it just comes back down to environment. Check out the environment before you go. Look, if you're going to Cancun and you're going to be in an all-inclusive resort where people are drinking all day, probably going to drink all day. You know? So you got to check out the environment and set yourself up for success before you get there.
Awesome. So I want to jump over to like the talking about the recruiting business. So
yeah,
you're really absolutely just crushing it with your desk. Like you had some struggle the first few months, had a client that was super late with payments, but then all of a sudden 8 placements came through. When you were on the road, how did you end up finding some of your best clients? And then how did you end up kind of growing into the niche that you specialize in now?
Been all over the place since I've been on the road as far as like strategy and type of clients that I serve go. It ultimately came down to one thing. So like finding good clients who align with my values and who align with the quality of service that I want to give to other people. This was like a big trial and error thing. And, you know, you can't be afraid to fire a bad client. So I would say that, you know, finding good clients was definitely trial and error. At the beginning, when I was in other countries, like I honestly outsourced a lot of my BD. And this was like the beginning of my BD or my outsourcing type of engagements, because while I was sleeping, you know, meetings were being put into my calendar and people were setting meetings for me. So that was super effective for me. And it immediately gave me the opportunity to see that, hey, delegating is key for scaling.
Okay, let's stop right there. Because I know a lot of recruiters that have tried outsourcing. It's been an absolute cluster, excuse my language, F something. I've seen many recruiters try it once or twice. It didn't work out, never do it again. On top of that, us recruiters are a bit of control freaks when it comes to everything that we do. How did you find people that could actually work your business development and help put meetings on the calendar?
I coach them. I coach them. I think it's like, yeah, if you take a plug and play solution, it might not play the way you want to play, but if you take the time to develop and build that relationship with the person who's doing the BD with you, you can train them to speak and use your language and use your approach. But yeah, it was a time investment. I took 20 hours to coach them on how I would approach. And I was constantly like reviewing the process that we had. And we were constantly looking at ways to develop it, to make it better. So it was like any other person that you're going to bring on board. But yeah, I just invested time in them to ensure that I was being represented well. And I had them buy into my vision, right? That was key.
How did you get them to buy into your vision? We're going to talk about vision towards the end because it is such a big thing. So like, but how did you get a new person that you're training, the outsourced business development, to buy into the vision that you have?
The feedback that I get is that it's just the energy that I put out when I talk about it. So it was drawing people in, so that if I could get, if I was so passionate and excited and sharing my vision with people, they would get excited and wanted to be part of that. And then I incentivized them, right? Whether it was monetary, whether it was, giving them an opportunity to learn something. Like it was always about them as well. So it was a two-way street.
Okay. And how did you find that first BD person to outsource? Like, what's the secret?
I just interviewed a few agencies and landed on one I liked. I honestly didn't look too hard. It wasn't perfect, but I had signed my contract really fast. And then I was like, okay, this isn't working, but I will show you how I want it to work. And then that was it.
I love that. Okay, awesome. And then how did you, because I know that you focus on the government contracting space within Canada, and that's been a huge part of your business. I know here in the United States, because I actually do government contracting too, it is a super complex system. How did you break into what I'm guessing is probably just as complex over on the Canadian side when it comes to government contracting?
Honestly, this was a kudos to tech systems. Right when I entered into the recruitment space, they immediately invested in me for like training for government. I had the privilege of working with, 50 of our top billers that all specialize within gov. They even went as far as like bringing in lawyers to teach us things that we can and cannot say, right? So they educated us. They educated us about the process. They educated us about procurement. They educated us about just like the do's and don'ts of government recruiting, and they empowered us to learn on our own. So I would say that like, yeah, it is a very complex environment, but it's actually incredibly easy to recruit for once you know what you're doing. So it was like an uphill climb, and then, it's very systematic. Then we built systems. To make that a lot easier. And yeah, I just learned the system really well, spent a lot of time with procurement, and yeah, I just got really curious.
And this is just a question for me and not all the listeners. So for the listeners, you guys could just tune out for the next like 10 seconds. Like I do a lot of stuff like in the cleared space. Like we have a lot of intelligence agencies that do some crazy stuff here in the US. Does Canada have like that too, and like security clearance levels?
We do, and I don't support that space.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Probably smart.
More on like the federal side and like sensitive data side, but like where I place in the sweet spot is like tech government. So like enhancing systems and stuff that's not so critical as far as it pertains to like data privacy. So I'm in a very like niche, like I play in the provincial side. I don't touch the federal side for those reasons.
I had to ask him. I think I'm just like glutton for punishment over here. So, so you're traveling the world. Like, how do you work with your clients, and how do you help them solve their problems so that way they keep on giving you more business?
I mean, it's twofold, because it's like in order to solve someone's problem, you really need to understand the problem, right? So positioning yourself as a person that could solve that problem was key. Government's a bit different because any vendor can get on a vendor list in public sector in Canada on the provincial side if a vendor management system is used. So the barrier to entry is actually quite low. Now, what gets complex is like the process and how everything works. So, I mean, it's twofold, right? To serve the clients, no different than what you would do it at home, except for that it's done through Zoom. And occasionally I do fly back and take people for dinner and get to see them and understand their problems. But yeah, it was a combination of things. Like when I went on the road, I took existing clients with me. So clients that I already had good relationships with. They also brokered a lot of introductions to other clients. But yeah, no, it was no different than anybody else working remotely does it. I got on Zoom, I met with them, and the first couple meetings are nothing about staffing. It's all about like, talk to me about what's going on in your world.
Okay.
And I don't ask them anything about staffing or trying to pitch my services. Actually, almost never. It just genuinely comes back to that.
And how did you end up growing your team too? Like, how did you get your first recruiter?
This was also, so it was kind of twofold. The way that Tima works is like, we have our partner groups.
Okay.
And under the partner groups are individuals that I brought into Tima. Not going to lie, 90% of them are from tech.
Based on their base salary and their low commissions, that's not a surprise.
It was great. It was super easy. And you know what? They're really structured and they kill it here. Building on the personal side, I honestly, I hired for intrinsic values.
Okay.
So I hired people, generally speaking, without experience. And I was more interested in understanding what motivated them and whether their heart was in the right place and what kind of values they had versus can you recruit? Because anybody can recruit. It's pretty easy to train somebody how to do the recruiting. It's just how do you think? What do you care about? What motivates you? It was more those intrinsic things that I really focused on.
Man, perfect. And okay, you've said this, I think you've said it 6 or 7 times based on me taking notes. Vision. And it sounds like vision is super important and a fundamental that I feel like maybe a lot of people forget about.
Yeah.
How did you go about craft? I know it was the I Never Coming Home was the first vision. And I feel like it probably wasn't as fleshed out as it is now, but how did you keep that vision close to you? It became the daily energy that has driven you to build a company while seeing 45 countries.
I honestly think it was intuition. I think as humans, we get intuitions on it and you have a choice whether you can act on it or not act on it. And I think the only difference was that I didn't let fear hold me back. My mentality was that, what's the worst that happens? I go back to corporate and okay, it's pretty bad. So there was that driver, I don't know, I just always had a draw towards what I was looking towards. Vision wasn't always clear. I honestly thought I wanted to be top recruiter of the world, build a large enterprise. But then I realized that was a huge time sacrifice. And I don't want to be rich. I don't need all that money. And I didn't want to be number one. So yeah, the vision, I would say, is purely intuition. It was just, I saw this thing. I wanted this thing. I wrote it down. Writing it down is key, by the way. I wrote it down and I just went for it.
So if you're listening to this and you have goals, stop what you're doing unless you're driving or at the gym. write your goals down.
Write them down.
Do you think if you didn't write them down, you'd be where you're at right now?
I don't have a crystal ball, so I don't know. But
Okay.
I think writing them down, things started changing when I started writing them down. Let's put it that way, in all aspects of my life.
The Elite Recruiter Podcast has multiple summits coming up that you need to make sure that you are registered for. We have the AI Recruiting Summit 2025 coming up. And on top of that, finish the year strong. These two summits are going to help you move the needle, help you achieve your goals, help you achieve your dreams, and make 2025 the year that you started out and you wanted it to be. Make sure you get registered, and also stay tuned. We got something cooking for you guys. Working on another project that you guys are going to absolutely love. All right. See you guys at the summits, and see you guys soon. What are some of the biggest pieces or learning lessons that you've actually gotten from being a digital nomad, from becoming time rich and wealthy too?
Yeah, I think it just, traveling the world is probably it's one of the world's best. It's like the greatest teacher out there, for sure. You learn a lot outside of just seeing different things, but you see how people live, you see how people interact. You interact with people in different languages. I think the biggest thing for me is that, I was traveling into a lot of impoverished countries where, people didn't really have much, but they were super happy. They had this joy about them that I wasn't so familiar or used to seeing in my own country. So I got more curious about where this joy was coming from if they don't have anything materialistic. So being in those environments, seeing how they live, seeing how they communicate, it just inspired me and kind of changed my mentality that hey, this is not actually what I want, because I want what they want, what they have as community, and they have, happiness and joy. And yeah, it really just over time, especially, shifted my mindset from needing materialistic things to finding happiness within and, happiness in the little things. So yeah, you become really grateful if you're open to it and just being able to harness that and give back in different ways. So yeah, it was definitely the environment. It opened my eyes to a lot because I'm from Canada. Life is pretty good in Canada. Pretty easy. And then the biggest thing was strangers off the street would invite you into their house for dinner just to get to know you. And, we're hey, that's kind of creepy, but there it's just normal. It's the community aspect was so big. So that was the biggest game changer for me.
And I want to talk about the second part of it, the time rich, but I want to talk about wealthy. Mm-hmm. And, I'm not going into ages or anything, but you're looking at retiring young within 6 years.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that you've set up for yourself to be able to do that?
The system that I created my desk on, because the way that I built it, it's just repeatable, it's sustainable, it's predictable. Things that aren't super common in recruiting, but that exist. So, as recruiters, we have this incredible opportunity to make big amounts of money, and knowing what to do with that money is a differentiator. So, yeah, no, I hired a wealth advisor. And for anyone listening, absolutely, you should have a wealth advisor. I have a fiduciary, would recommend. But yeah, the biggest thing is just, hey, we make a lot of money, do something with it.
And in 6 years, when you retire, what does that look like? What does your life look like after that? What's your plan?
My plan is to not have a plan. No, I'm just kidding. My longer game is I'd like to, depending on where we pick as a permanent place to settle, TBD, but I'd really like to, I picked up surfing when I was traveling, and one of my goals is to actually just open a charity and help kids coming from low-income families have better access to surfboards and surf lessons, whether it's surfing or another sport, depending on where we end up. I think that's what I would like to do, is just give back to, individuals and create opportunities for them. And it might even be a business skills setting, right? Teach these individuals business skills, basic business skills, how to market themselves. It's a weird dog.
There's a puppy in the background for those listening. Oh, wait, okay. So wait, pause. You also travel with your pet.
Yeah. I didn't
that.
know. I didn't always have her.
Oh, hey puppy. I love that. Pets are part of your family.
They are.
I know we've unpacked a lot. And the last thing I want to talk about before we actually jump over the quickfire questions, you've talked about vision being super important, but you've also talked about systems. When you say systems, what does that actually mean?
Efficiency.
Okay.
It means creating efficiency. So when I say systems, I'm thinking almost predictable outcomes and just finding efficiencies to execute on those as fast as possible. So when I think of my world, systems that I've created are like anything that takes time. So going back to the basics, like if you're starting out, take a piece of paper out and write down what you're doing every minute of the day for like 3 days. And then I started chunking those things off. And I'm like, hey, what could be automated? What doesn't have to be me? The biggest part was like, what don't I have to do, right? Like, is the world going to end if I don't do this? 98% of the things are no. So I just started outsourcing. So when I talk about systems, I talk about like different technologies, not too many, just ones that make sense. So like automating basic workflows, writing emails. I play in the gov space. So like I literally automated everything from, so like when I get the requisitions from the government, I pump it into an analyst. The analyst breaks it all down, highlights what's important, what's not, and then it populates my matrix for me. So like we have these really elaborate candidate matrices that candidates have to fill out. I have the AI preload the template with all of these questions so that they're giving me exactly what I know will score high. And then I have to then shortlist. So I have another analyst that shortlists all the candidates. So these are the types of systems that I speak about. Now it's going to be different depending on what space you play in, but sourcing. Like I always had a system to like augment sourcing. I had 4 sourcers and they all use different tech tools. So it opened a lot of doors for me. So those are like examples of what I would use from like a tech system. It's just like really using the automation to do things that you shouldn't have to do. The other systems that I speak of is like outsourcing, partnering, collaborating as much as you possibly can. So those systems, and then just basic workflows. So like really ironing out what's going to convert, what has a good ROI, what does not, what kind of principles you're going to run your desk by, what's acceptable, what's not, and having everything very like clear. Because when you have these clear outlines, you're able to work within those. So that's when I talk about systems. It's not just technical systems. It's like your approach to how you run your desk. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense. And thank you for explaining that. Because I know sometimes like listeners hear the word system and they're like, all right, so what does that actually mean? Giving you some details. Like, do I need to do this? Need to do that? And you just did a good job, like kind of laying out a good structure of the understanding of that. So before we jump over to the quickfire questions, is there anything else that you want to share about like traveling the world, being a digital nomad, being smart with your money, building a team, or, you know, what you're doing in the recruiting desk?
That was a fully loaded question. Yeah, my biggest advice for the listeners is like, get coaches.
Okay.
Get coaches. I have coaches for absolutely everything. And I think the biggest unrelated one is like your nutrition and your lifestyle. So like your nutrition and your lifestyle doesn't stop when you get onto the road. So like having coaches that can help you eat healthy, who can hold you accountable to going to the gym, like these things translate into your desk, right? The healthier lifestyle you have, generally, you know, the better you do in business. At least that was the case for me. So having coaches, you know, I have a Tony Robbins coach, I have financial coaches. So it's like, you know, I have never lost the like lifelong learning mentality. And I would suggest others do the same. It's just like, you know, lean on these people for their expertise. You don't need to learn everything. You should really just lean on the experts for what the experts are good at. And those are the things that have enabled me to kind of skyrocket. It's just, I don't have to do everything on my own, nor do I want to. Like when someone gives me a task, the first thing I think about is like, who can I delegate this to? But yeah, the coaching piece is huge.
Okay. So coaching has been a huge game changer for you.
Yeah.
Did you automatically want to delegate stuff, or was that something that you had to force yourself to like, I needed to actually delegate?
I was always pretty good at delegating. Honestly, I think though it came from, you know, just understanding competitive and comparative advantage in economics. This was like the hardest lesson for me to grasp my head around when my professor was explaining it to me, because he was using pizzas as an example. But yeah, it finally clicked. And I was like, oh, well, competitive and comparative advantage. Anything that's not competitive to me, I'm going to outsource. And that's just kind of how I saw the world.
Good approach to that. Well, so jumping over the quickfire questions, and like, I'm sure like some of these questions are just, and they don't need to be quick answers, but you're going through these, like you're hiring recruiters, you're bringing recruiters on. But if one of those recruiters that like you're bringing on that's never been a recruiter before, just starting in the industry in 2025, they sat down with you and said, if you can give me one piece of advice to have a successful career, what would it be?
It's a 2-part answer. I would say be humble and be curious. Recruiting is the most complex, simple industry out there, I feel. There's so many facets of it. So like being curious and being a sponge and being open to learning will be a game changer. And that was probably the biggest game changer for me. So I would say it is a lifelong learning opportunity, and never stop learning. That would be my advice. Awesome. Always be open.
Same question, but for somebody that's been in the game, you know, decade, 2 decades, what advice would you give to them if they sat down and asked you the same question?
Be open. Nah, I think, it's such a busy environment. I would say my advice for them would be like, never lose sight of the basics. So like the basic things, the fundamentals of recruiting, and always have the clear vision. Yeah, because I think, we're in that shiny object syndrome. Like we have shiny object syndrome. So yeah, no, I see the biggest thing with the recruiters that I work with that might be having a challenging year this year or last year is like at some point they stopped learning. So my advice is never stop learning, always be open and stay ahead of it.
Okay, perfect. Do you have a book that's had a huge impact on your career or life?
Yeah. I don't know if it was like biased because a really good sales guy was like, this book changed my sales career. So I just loved the book. But Pitch Anything by Oren Klaff.
All right. That's definitely a good one.
Yeah.
What is working right now for you in 2025 when it comes to business development?
Outside the box, like thinking way outside the box, trying to drive value that falls outside of traditional recruitment is key. So, I mean, in your case, having a podcast where you're constantly creating value for people. Podcasts are a great way to open the doors from a BD perspective. So I would say podcasts, white papers. One of the biggest things that I coach my recruiters to do is I'm like, you speak to 20, 30 candidates every single week. Absolutely record those calls and use the AI to derive something that you can give back to people. You're not even creating extra work. It's just like you're gaining insights, you're asking good questions, you're getting good insights, hopefully in one market, and then you give it back to people and create different value streams, right? Like I think that's just such a low-hanging fruit that people don't do.
Yeah, you were right about that. I mean, we spend so much time doing things that we don't realize has so much value. And now you can use the AI to like put it all together.
Supercharged. The worst part is like lots of people are actually recording their calls, but they're not doing anything with that data. Like that data is your ticket to bring value to people that they can't find online.
Out of curiosity, like when you're traveling the world and everything, like what are you using for your phone lines to have all these conversations? Like what program?
I usually try to keep everything on Google Meets because I find it has the best quality. Honestly, I push most people to WhatsApp. I'm like, hey, you have WhatsApp? I'm like, no. And I'm like, okay, I need you to download it because I have bad bandwidth. It's a joke. And then otherwise I use Dialpad, so VoIP, but it's not as good as like Google Meets. Google Meets is the best for me. Or if I'm in a low latency network area, then I use WhatsApp.
Okay. Man. I didn't think... Oh, go ahead.
Voice notes. Voice notes on WhatsApp are king. When you're having a long distance relationship, like being able to talk to people, like my clients are like, wow, I love these voice notes.
I think it's a funny thing because I'm definitely an American when it comes to WhatsApp. Like, what is WhatsApp? I downloaded it because I'm doing some stuff like over in Europe, and I reopened it. I have 42,000 unread WhatsApp messages, and I'm like, what the heck happened? Like, how are this many people messaging me? I have no clue what to do with it.
The rest of the world uses WhatsApp.
Literally, like every time I go somewhere else outside the US, they're like, you have a WhatsApp? And I'm like, what's a WhatsApp? You've built a desk for yourself that's $10 million. You have a team of 10 that's doing about $7 million. You've traveled to 45 countries. What is one of the biggest failures that you've had to work through with your recruiting business?
I thought about this question. I would say at the beginning, it was like lack of strategy.
Okay.
Like now I am very niche, right? And it wasn't always that way. So I would say like biggest failure was definitely lack of strategy and kind of too much trial and error and never honing down and committing to something. The other part was like, I lost $100,000 scaling. I would say some might see that as a failure. I saw it as a big learning lesson.
You got to talk about this now. Losing $100,000 scaling. Like what happened?
There's a difference between like scaling to grow and scaling to grow effectively, I guess. So because I had a lack of strategy, I thought that more people were the answer to my problems. What it actually did for me, so I hired more people to kind of outsource some things. And what it actually did to me was create a whole lot of work, which was totally against my original vision. So I had a little bit of a conflict, and then COVID hit. Oh, no, not COVID. Like the recession hit post-COVID, like the decline we had. And I had, people working for me, and it was a tough market. And instead of, letting them go, I kept them all. And yeah, we lost quite a bit. But yeah, it all came down to scaling for the wrong reasons because I was trying to scale to get more time back. And, I wasn't able to create the opportunity that I should have created for them at the same time. It was a big learning lesson.
100K is definitely a learning lesson. Well, and this kind of flows into the next question and definitely some different examples. But if you got the chance to go back in time, sit down and give yourself advice at the very beginning of your recruiting career at Tech Systems, when you were a baby recruiter, what advice would you give yourself?
God, it would just be curious. Be curious and be open. I think I'm going to go back. We already talked about this, but yeah, I would just be curious, be open. The only thing I would have done a little bit differently is break free sooner. Maybe that's my advice. And what I mean by that is like, I was probably 3 weeks into the job at recruiting. And once I understood the business model behind it, I was like, wow, we should start our own. And I didn't for another 4 years, right? But I was literally like sitting there crunching numbers. I was like, damn, there's a lot of money in that industry. So I guess my advice would be like, believe in yourself, break free sooner, and get a good coach along the way.
Get a good coach, break free. When you first started, and this is something like, I don't blame people for not jumping out and starting their own business initially, especially if you're in one of those college shops, because it looks all so complex. And I don't know how many years ago that was, but at least for me, like information wasn't as available to start your recruiting company, which now you can hire a coach. You can ask somebody. Like recruiters now share so much information that never happened back in, I think, 2006 when I started. Everybody held the stuff close to the desk. So you can literally just now go ask somebody like Ashley, like, how the hell did you do it?
Yeah.
Same question. Let's fast forward. You're a few months into your traveling. I know we've probably talked about like some of the stuff, but if you get the chance to sit down with yourself, knowing everything that you know now, and you gave yourself advice while you're in Bali, after your first few clients paid, what advice would you tell yourself?
I would tell myself to sit down and figure out what my end game was. And I would make it very specific. And then one thing that I learned throughout my coaching is like celebrate what that day is going to look like. Like envision what that day is going to look like when you achieve that goal. Honestly, when you start embedding these future state, like good vibe feelings into you, it really helps with the draw. So it's like having a clear vision, sitting down. When it comes to like tactics, becoming an expert in one area. Like it doesn't have to be like developers, but like in one industry. So this would be something huge for me because like I played in private, public, enterprise. Like I was all over the place, and I was more of like a jack of all trades, not really good at any one thing. So the game changing started happening when I just niched down and went into one vertical and got really good at that one vertical, because then, I had a lot more to bring to the table when it came to conversation. So that would be my second thing. And then it's like execute and measure. Sorry. Measuring is important. So it's like execute on the strategy that you're setting and measure what that success looks like and come back frequently to that strategy. Very, very basic things.
But it's the basic things that a lot of people don't do.
Yeah. And you can't skip those, especially the power of the data that we have now. It's a missed opportunity.
What are your favorite data points that you like to track?
Honestly, just conversions.
Love it.
Sub to interview and interview to close.
When you're traveling, what does your tech stack look like overall?
Very lean. I just use like the basic AI tools, so ChatGPT, Gemini, etc. The way that I have my recruitment desk, like I haven't recruited in 3 or 4 years myself in the day-to-day. I just partner with really excellent recruiters. So I would say that they are my biggest asset to the team that stands beside me. So going back to advice, it would be build a strong team around you would probably be my biggest piece of advice, because I'd be nothing without them. I play with anything that comes out that brings value, but what I've found is that bad tools actually create a lot of work. And you don't need to use a tool for the sake of using a tool. Like if it doesn't bring value to you, stop using it.
I've been joking with a lot of recruiters because like I love AI tools. I host an AI recruiting summit, but at the same time, I think a lot of these AI tools like is actually costing recruiters money, like time, effort, energy that they're missing billings because of it.
Learn the value of your time, right? Like this is a big thing that I have in my course is like, you need to understand what the dollar value is on an hour of your time. And that will help you prioritize what you should and should not do.
Perfect. Last question before I let you go. You probably get asked by a lot of recruiters. You've had a lot of success. Like recruiters want to know tactically what you're doing, how you're traveling the world, all these things. Is there a question that you wish a recruiter would actually ask you, but they normally never do? And what would be that answer?
I would love for them to ask me how to build a desk for the future. So like not today, not 12 months from now, but like the 3 to 5 year mark really is like where I think recruiters should be looking, because it's not like, it took me 6 years to build what I built. It wasn't an overnight thing, and I wasn't always killing it, right? Like it took a lot of time. So building that strategy and having the right strategy in place to build for 3 to 5 years from now is key. And I just wish more recruiters asked me, but most of the questions I get are like, what do I change today to have results tomorrow? And like, it just doesn't work like that.
I love that you laid it out like this, what seems, or what people listening to might look at this as like overnight success, has been 6 years of grinding, 6 years of planning, 6 years of execution, all going into the conversation that we're having today.
6 years of failing. Like,
there we go.
Getting back up.
6 years of failing, getting back up. So if somebody like wants to follow you, how do they go about doing that?
LinkedIn is probably the best option.
Okay.
Yeah, LinkedIn.
And before I let you go, is there anything else that you would love to share with the listeners?
No. Yeah, no, I mean, the only thing I would say is like, if you have questions, if you are curious, if there's anything I said today that you want to learn more about, like, I mean, I'm an open book, so reach out. Happy to share. I do not hold anything close to my chest.
And that is awesome. Thank you for like reaching out, coming on, because like, I think a lot of people and a lot of recruiters have this dream life of what they want it to be like.
Yeah.
And you're a great example of living that dream life while still doing great with your billings, still crushing it, but you're achieving the dreams that you set out to achieve. So once again, thank you so much for reaching out, Ashley. This has been an awesome episode, and I think we'll have a few more conversations throughout the year. There's some stuff that it looks like that you're putting together that I think recruiters should see.
Yeah.
When it's all live. So
I appreciate it.
For the listeners, here's some things I want you guys to do. Spend a few hours, block it out on your calendar, put together your vision, put together what she said, what your next 36 plus months is going to look like, and start executing and working towards that, because recruiting is a opportunity for you to chase your dreams. Go crush it, guys. Every minute a recruiter spends on paperwork is lost time making placements. That's where Ascend steps in. A modern employer of record and back office solution built to boost the bottom line. Ascend automates onboarding, payroll, compliance, and invoicing in one streamlined platform. It integrates effortlessly with all your tools and scales as you grow, saving you hours and cutting your operational costs significantly. Want less paperwork and more placements? Head over to ascend.com and see how Ascend can make the difference for you.